Before we dive into the project, we need to first talk about Git. We briefly discussed it in the intro video, but let's dive a bit deeper into it on how Git works and how to use it. So Git is a fundamental tool for software engineers. It's the most popular version control software used by every single software engineer. It has a distributed architecture where everyone has a working copy of their code in their local system as well. So version control basically allows us to keep a record of every single change that has been made to the code. And it sources code in what's called a repository. Just like if we want to keep our valuables protected and safe, we tend to store it in a bank safe. Software code, or otherwise known as source code, is the most precious asset. And to protect that, developers use Git to store the code in a repository. So the first thing we're going to do is install Git. Let's head over to Google and search Git install. We're going to head over to Git downloads. And since I'm on Windows, I'm going to install the Windows version. Just going to hit next, install that in the default location. Okay, so we're going to be using the Vim editor. You can use any other you want, but I like to use Vim personally. We're just going to keep everything as default. Alright, so Git is installed. Now that we have Git installed, let's use one of the web-based Git repository which will be hosting our source code. There are quite a few out there, such as GitLab, Bitbucket, and GitHub being the most popular one. I've used all three in the past and they all have slight variation in terms of tools that they support and offer. And it comes down to preference in terms of features they offer when picking one. In this project, we'll be using GitHub. So let's head over to GitHub. And the first thing we're going to do is create an account. Now, I've already created an account, so I'm just going to sign into mine. We can head over to my profile. And you can see these are some of the repositories I worked on in the past. As you can see, it's a place where our source code can remain same, and we can always go back and recover it if our local computer were to crash. Now, we created this Hello World application. Let's see how to push this to Git. So the first thing we're going to do is let's create a new repository. So we can click this new button, and let's call this Hello World. And we can make this public or private. So public meaning anyone can access this repository. Private means only we can access it, or I can access it only. So let's make this private for now. We don't need the README file for now. I'm going to talk about what gitignore is shortly. There's no license associated with this, so let's create this repository. All right, so our repository is now created, and you can already see it's giving us some of the commands on how we can use this repository and push our code base to it. So let's follow this. Before we move forward, I want to make a note of one thing. Here you can see we have SSH and HTTPS. Now, since we created an account in GitHub, we need to push our local code to the repo, and we need to authenticate. And there are two ways. We can do it either via HTTPS or SSH. And SSH is recommended as it is a lot more secure than using HTTPS because we need to pass in the credentials, and that is known to be less secure when compared to SSH. So let's see how to set up an SSH key. We can click this drop down over here, and we can head over to settings. Now in our settings, we have this SSH key set up here. We click on this, and that even tells us there's a guide here that shows us how to set up our SSH key. So let's click on this, and we need to generate a new SSH key. So I'm going to head over here, and we can pretty much copy and paste this command. So let's do that. So I'm going to open up Git Bash here, and let's follow these steps. I'm going to enter my email. All right, so I'm just going to save it in the default location. I'm going to leave it empty for now, my passphrase. All right, so my SSH key is generated. Now we need to copy this key and place it over here. We need to add our new SSH key over here. So let's do that. I'm going to clip the SSH key and add it here. All right, and that's it. It's done. Now we can head over here and let's follow these steps. So we are already in this directory in Hello World, and let's follow these commands. We're going to head over to the main branch. So let's add all of these files for now. So to add all of these files, we just do git add and we click the dot sign. So what this dot means is add all of these files, add all of these changes. And we can commit this. So we can add a message. Let's call this initial commit of hello world. All right, and now we need to add our remote. We can even verify if you have any remote link to this. So we have none. So let's add our remote. All right, and let's just verify our remote. Okay, it's added. And let's just push this. Our code is pushed to Git now. And we can verify this. So if I have our code, we can see our code is now pushed. You can see when it was committed. We can check the commit message as well. You can see initial commit of hello world. It was committed by me about a minute ago. Let's talk a little bit about Gitflow and also gitignore. So when we're working in a team, there is some sort of structure defined in terms of how code should be pushed. Generally, main or the master branch is a branch where code cannot be directly pushed, as it is a branch that should be fully working and also where other members of the team are basing their code off. If a developer was working on a feature branch, and let's say if he pushed his code to the main branch directly, he can accidentally break it if he introduced a bug, and this can impact the whole team. So main branches are always locked, and you can only push to it or merge to it by raising a pull request, and also ensuring that the feature branch was successfully built. Now this sounds like a lot, but let me show you what I mean. So let's head over to settings, and I'm gonna go to branches, and I'm gonna add a rule to it. So I'm gonna say for the main branch, it requires a pull request before merging. And I'm gonna say for now, let's just say it's only require run approval. And there's a bunch of other settings you can apply to it as well. So for now, let's just keep this one. And let's create this rule. Actually, it looks like I can't create this rule because I'm not on a GitHub team or enterprise version. But you get the idea. So basically, if this rule was in effect, I wouldn't be able to push directly to the main branch. I would need to raise a pull request. All right, when we're working in an agile team, we get tickets assigned that are run in sprints. Let's say we have this one small ticket where we want to add a gitignore file, and we want to ignore these directories. We want to ignore the idea directory and the out and this IML directory. We only want to keep the source code and only push that to Git. So let's do that. So one of the ways we would do it is, let's check out our branch first. So we use this git checkout, and then -b means that, create a new branch. And let's call this a feature branch. So this is one of the workflows of Git. So whenever we're working on a feature, we generally have a feature, and then we have some sort of ticket number assigned. Let's say our ticket is, some number, 1, 2, 3, 4, and let's give this a small description as well. So let's say adding gitignore. This is one of the tickets we're working on. All right, so our new branch is created, and we can see we're on this branch. And let's add this gitignore. So let's create a new file, and let's call this .gitignore. So gitignore is a file where we specify the files that we don't want to track the changes for. And we want to delete the idea, the out, and the IML files that we push to Git already. So let's see how to do that. We are going to type in this command git rm and remove recursively. All right, so these removed all of the cache files, and if I do git status, we can see all the files that are added. Now we can add gitignore to ignore all of these deleted files. So let's do that. As you can see, this says deleted. So we want to push all of these deleted files back to Git and remove the idea, the out directory, the idea directory, and also the IML file as well. Except we don't want to delete this. We want to keep this. So let's use this command, git resource stage. And let's add back this file. And we can just hit enter. And if you do git status, we can see that file is going to be added back. All right, so we don't see that anymore. Now we can, let's try to ignore these files, this directory, these three. So to do that, it's pretty simple. We can pretty much just copy this. And instead of specifying hello world IML, I'm just going to use asterisk. So this is a wildcard. So this wildcard basically specifies, ignore any files or any names as a prefix before IML. If I do git status again, we're not going to see this file anymore. All right, so there you go. So let's add all of these files back in. So let's do git add dot. Let's commit this. And let's add, so generally in the commit message, this is like a nice rule. Add the ticket number. So our ticket is 1234. And let's add a commit message. All right, and let's push this. So we can just copy paste this. Since this branch doesn't exist in Git, it's giving us that we need to push this branch. We need to upload this branch to Git. So we can just copy and paste that command. All right, so our branch is pushed. And if you go back to our Hello World repo, if you go to main, we can see this branch got pushed here. You can see now we got the gitignore and we got our source code. So generally this is what we want in our Git to be. We don't want all the other junk there. Now let's raise a pull request. So we can say compare and raise a pull request. So we want to merge this to a main branch. So let's do that. Now over here, if you're working in a team, developers can go in, they can review this pull request. And if they have any questions or comments they need to make, they can leave it here. And if it's good, they can approve this and then you can merge it. All right, so in our case, let's just merge this. All right, so our pull request has been merged and it's closed. And if I go back to code again, you can see now in my main branch, I only have these two files. And we can see the commits that were made as well. So you can see the ticket number, you can see what the pull request was merged and who merged it. We can see all the changes that was made. So if I go to this, you can see these are all the changes that were made to the file. One last thing I want to go over are the branch naming conventions. We just went over one of them, which was a feature branch. Whenever we're adding a new feature, we use a feature branch name, just like we did with gitignore. Now, if you're working on a bug, we call the branch bug fix, and it looks something like this. So we would generally want to do, we would say git checkout main. Let's just pull that. All right, and then we would do git checkout bug fix, and then the ticket number. So let's say ticket is 12 whatever, and the name of the brand, a short description of what the bug was. And there's also another branch, and it's called hotfix. And hotfix is pretty much a branch used when there's a bug in production, and that needs to be fixed immediately. And same thing, we do check out a new branch from main and we do hotfix. And same thing, ticket number and a short description. So these are some of the major branch naming conventions that use in the industry. And to recap, we just went over how to install Git and how to use it. We went over the Git workflow and the branch naming convention as well. Next, we are now ready to start our project.